Hello and welcome to this pre-recorded presentation presented by the Cooper Hamilton Company. We are determined to put service back into customer service. One way to begin this quest is to focus on how human resources has evolved from just a personnel department to a strategic partner and a catalyst for a service culture and significant contributor to an organization's competitive advantage. I want to talk a little bit about the goals that we hope to accomplish in this presentation. First of all, we want to talk about understanding the next step in HR evolution. And there certainly has been an evolution in HR over the past century, and quite quickly in the last 10 to 15 years, and we want to talk about where we have been, where we are, and where we should be headed, if not already there. We want to learn HR's role as a strategic partner, and that is part of the evolution where we end up and where we should be looking forward. And if we're not behaving and becoming a strategic partner in our organization, we really should be, and we need to learn why we're not. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go further into this presentation. We want to understand the vision of an organization, and this is absolutely critical in all departments, and especially HR, and we'll again talk about that. But we really, at the end of this presentation, we want to know why it is important for everyone in the organization, but especially HR, to understand the vision of the organization. We want to know what the 4 pillars of a service culture, an excellent service culture, is, and why HR is the main player, absolutely the main player. These 4 pillars help hold up that service culture. And if we don't have them in place and don't have them correct, the service culture just falls to pieces. And when that happens, the organization is struggling. We want to learn what steps we need to take to gain a seat at the C-suite. Now, for those of you on this that aren't sure what I mean when I say the C-suite, well, it gets its name primarily because of the C in the C-suite. It stands for Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer. There's a lot of chiefs in that C-suite, and it's probably considered the most important, influential group of individuals with that are involved in high-stake decision-making of the organization. Not everyone at the table's a chief, but that's just as a history. That's how C-suite got the name. We also want to learn how to reduce customer and employee attrition. Very important. They're often tied together, and it's reflective of really the financial status of a company, whether those two are working in alignment or in tandem or not. And we certainly have to recognize at the end how important our internal customers are, as well as our external customers, and how we go about assimilating them, bringing them into the culture of a service organization. What steps do we need to take? Are we there? Do we have a bunch of silos? Are we not all working together? Do we all not understand that customer service is a group effort, an organizational effort? And if not, what are the steps that we need to take to make sure that happens? So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation. So let's cut to the chase. To help us understand how we can achieve these goals, we're going to talk a little bit about the story of HR Janice and how she has approached these obstacles and the challenges that most every HR professional has faced in trying to get their organization to do better as a service culture and in the customer service arena. Nobody, let's face it, nobody wants their industry, their company to be on the list of companies that have the worst reputation for customer service. Let's see how Janice approached these challenges and proceed from want to talk a little bit about Janice's background, just to give you an idea of where she's coming from. She has been, as far as experience, she's been in HR department for probably about 15 years. Is very enthusiastic about her job. Went to a Midwestern university, got a bachelor's degree, and is very proud of the fact that she has been with her current company for most of the 15 years. Actually, 5 years she did spend outside of her current company, but so she's very proud of the 10 years she spent with them. She's seen HR change over just in those short time she's been in HR, 15 years. She's seen it change a lot, some good, some bad. She's also known around the company as being pretty enthusiastic. She isn't really the type of person who stays quiet and just does her job. If she sees something out of whack or not working right, she's going to say something. And she's sort of proud of that. She's felt a very strong stewardship towards her company, and feels that if everyone had that same feeling, the company would be better for it. She is pretty short. She's about 4'10". She is, although don't let that fool you, she has the determination of a defensive end for the Packers. Janice takes her job extremely seriously, perhaps too seriously, because she can get really overly frustrated when she knows something just isn't working right, but her comments fall on deaf ears. I think we probably all can relate to that feeling. She has, I said, her bachelor's degree. She is working towards her MBA, and she wants to specialize in organizational behavior. Now, it's clear to her, and clear to anyone else who knows Janice and knows what she's facing, is that there's a lot of forces that she's going to have to reckon with in order to make some changes to her organization. The good news is she is determined, and these are obstacles she's going to have to face, but if anyone can do it, certainly Janice can. Now, unfortunately, we're going to talk a little bit about the industry she's in, and the industry she is in is known for not having a very good customer service reputation. So let's explore a little bit about what industry she's in and how she plans to maybe make that difference that we all hope to do in our organization. Now, Janice works in the cable industry, and if any of us have cable, I think we can relate to this somewhat. It is listed as one of I think it's the top 10 or top 15, one of the top 15 worst industries for customer service. I used to work a long time ago for cable, so I feel I have some degree of latitude to talk a little bit about it. I also know, as Janice does, that everyone works very hard in the cable industry. At least when I was there, we all worked very hard. I don't doubt that that's different now, but there are just some things that need to be changed, to be altered, to be adjusted in order to change that culture that's just permeated that industry and turn it back into an industry where they have good customer service and they're viewed favorably by customers and the people in general. So we're going to look at some other industries, though, that also have this reputation. Here are some of the other industries that we mentioned on the previous slide that also have less than stellar reputations for good customer service. And you can read these, you can tell which ones they are. You probably could have guessed most of these. If I just would have given you a blank slide, you probably would have guessed them. But just wanted to show you that there just are a number of industries out there that need to do better. And hopefully with this slide and what we talk about, there will be steps, and everyone's going to take on the mantra of putting service back in customer service. But I just wanted to show you this quickly. Knowing that her industry is rated one of the top that are poor in customer service really does make Janice feel sad. She works hard. She knows a lot of her fellow colleagues work hard, and it's unfortunate that it's viewed that way and that things need to change. They need to change fast. She was recently in fact, she was just recently in an operations meeting, and they read a letter out loud about a lady who was still waiting after 3 weeks for a supervisor to call her back. That was just very, very disturbing to everyone in the meeting. And then they read another letter where one of the customers opined that they were transferred 5 times. And you know, the funny thing is, it wasn't 5 times within that very company in that particular city. They were transferred 5 times throughout the country, and then eventually she ended up talking to someone who was halfway around the globe. And of course, she was a very, very frustrated customer, and probably is no longer a customer. And it could have been stopped. It needs to stop. But Janice has to figure out what steps need to be done right away, because she knows it's very costly to her organization, to her industry, to all industries, if customer service is not put on the front of the problems and the challenges that are facing organizations to be solved. If not, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to cost organizations an unbelievable amount of money. So let's just see what costs are involved. Janice knows that the cost for a company to have a reputation for such bad customer service is very costly. She knows, Janice is scary smart. Janice knows that 86% of her consumers quit doing business with them because of a bad customer experience. And she also knows that 51% of her customers said they would only try to reach their support desk, once before giving up on a purchase. Wow. She knows they're in really big trouble over that, because it takes many tries before a customer is successful in reaching the help desk. So they are in big trouble, and she knows the costs that are involved. So let's look at what actually is the cost to the U.S. economy. Now, Janice also understands that poor customer service costs not only her specific industry, but the U.S. economy a lot of money. In fact, poor customer service costs the U.S. economy approximately, do you think $100 million? No. It's not $500 million. $1 billion? No. $40 billion? No. It costs the U.S. economy approximately $83 billion by not having good customer service, by having poor customer service. The U.S. economy, it costs our U.S. economy approximately $83 billion. That is just amazing, and it really doesn't have to be that much. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to explore what are some ideas, what are some things that we can do to try and reduce that obscene figure. Now, HR Janice isn't blind. She knows that there are a lot of things going wrong, but she also knows that there are things that can be fixed. In fact, she has some ideas that would make it easier, would make it better for her industry, but she did know that it wouldn't be easy to make those changes. It's going to be a hard journey. It's something that isn't going to be easy. It's going to require a lot of effort, but you know what? She's determined. She really believes that her industry deserves better and that it can be better, and she's going to try to make those changes. Now, one of the things she wants to explore is, well, where have we been, where are we now, and where should we be? And the next slide, a couple of slides, will show us where we've been and where we should be, and what some of the organizations who engage in best practices, HR best practices, how they're operating. So let's go on to the next slide. These two pyramids, triangles, should be familiar with most of you, but if not, I'm going to briefly go through them. The triangle on the left, you can see proportionally where we have been. And some companies are still in this, are still stuck in this particular pyramid, where they spend 65 to 75% of their time doing transactional work, and then only 5 to 15% doing transformational type of work. And that's fine, except that isn't going to get them where they need to be in relation to operating as a top HR organization does with best practices. The reason that's important is because it will help lead them into work as a competitive edge and having a competitive advantage over their competitors. So typically the transactional is considered benefits administration, record keeping, employee service. You know, the traditional is just that. It's the recruiting, it's performance management, employee relations, compensation. But the transformational, and this is really what I want us to pay attention to, is the knowledge management, strategic redirection and renewal, cultural change, and management development. And as you can see, a lot of the upside down pyramid on the right is where the organizations that engage in HR best practices operate in. They are now at the 65-75% of their time spent transformational. Transactional 5 to 15%. Some of them outsource it, others find workarounds on how they can reduce that internally. But what I want to get across here is the time that these organizations are spending in the transformational realm. And I think that's something that we need to, if you're not doing it already, to work with your CEO, your top management, and figure out a way to make these adjustments. So let's explore a little bit more how and why we've come to this upside down triangle. This is another slide that just wanted to point out how the evolution of HR has occurred. Many years ago, we started with labor relations, where that's how we sort of came out of the sea, so to speak. You have your labor relations, and then we spent a lot of time on employee relations. Personnel, that was the key term. My mom was a personnel director for 30 years, many years ago. She did different things than what the next generation of HR people did, which was focus on the human resources and how they're going to be effectively used. And currently we are looking at an organizational effectiveness. How can we affect the organization in a positive way, achieve the goals of the C-suite, achieve the goals that will make our corporation or company successful. And we've had to make all of these different changes over time because the business models have changed over time. HR is directly affected by how the business model changes. So the next time the business models change, so will we. But I do see the organizational effectiveness. We're just starting into that. I think more companies need to get on board with it, more C-suite, CEOs, COOs, more so than HR. I think HR gets it for the most part, but there's that big obstacle on how to convince the C-suite on how we can become more effective on an organizational-wide basis in different ways than what they're used to seeing us as. Now, one of the things we need to understand is our whole goal is to build an excellent service culture, because to have a great customer service environment, you have to have excellent service culture. And how do you do that? You have employees that are very satisfied. As we will see later, there's a correlation between employee satisfaction and customer loyalty and customer retention. But where HR comes into play, We have these 4 pillars that we have to put up, and we have to hold up the employee satisfaction, which will hold up the excellent service culture, and that's policies, procedures, processes, and training. As Janice noted, there are a number of actions, immediate actions that she can take that will go a long way towards changing the service culture of her organization and being viewed better both internally and externally as an organization that is in favor of good customer service and provides good customer service. So the first thing that must change is the alignment. Let's look at the company vision. We're going to talk a lot about that as we go forward. But the company vision and understanding what the company vision is for everyone in the company is extremely important. Her company vision, Janice's company vision, states, "We intend to provide our customers with the best experience from beginning to end, with knowledgeable, customer-friendly interactions with our employees, ensuring quality service. We treat our customers like family." And then she's looking at her cable company, her organization. She's looking at the processes and practices, policies, procedures, and the training that are currently in existence. And she can already see there's some things that are out of alignment. And let's look and see what those are. I'm not able to really emphasize enough how important it is that the vision of the organization and the policies, processes, practices, procedures, and training are in alignment with that vision. Let me give you a few examples of that. For example, are the department goals, not just yours, but other departments, are the goals aligned with the customer service mission? Does management specifically reward departments, managers on how well they score on customer service measures? What about, do they reward managers on how well they provide excellent service to other departments? I bet you there's a lot that reward people for the customer service external, but probably not as much on the internal side, and that's something that we really need to improve upon. Another example, job ads. Do they include your service mission? Do we have on recruitment literature? Do we mention our commitment to excellent customer service? We should have that. Do we have interview questions that include the commitment to service? What about orientation programs? Do they stress the service mission? Training, do we get involved in that with the training, all of the onboarding? What about feedback? Is there a set plan to consistently share customer feedback with the employees? Probably not. If there is, good for you. Kudos to your organization. What about department and unit comparisons of customer service performance scores? Not only externally or internally. Do we compare those? Should. Why not? And let's see what that other one, the one that's doing well, what they're doing differently than the ones that aren't. And let's make those changes right away. So these are just examples that I wanted you to start thinking about on how and what you have in your organization and how we can change that to improve our service culture in the organization. Now, Janice knows something is wrong because, again, look at the company vision. We intend to provide our customers with the best experience from beginning to end with knowledgeable, customer-friendly interactions with our employees, ensuring quality service. We treat our customers like family. But yet Janice knows that customers usually cannot talk to a live person, if ever. Sometimes they have to just press those buttons and talk to audits, and it's a long time before they actually can talk to a live person. She also knows that the frontline people feel little job security. And when I mean job security, I don't mean tenure. I mean that the people on the front line can see what is the problem, they know what is the problem, but they are scared to death to say anything because they are fearful that they will lose their job. She knows that problem exists. The customer service's problem. She hears that all the time, and that isn't the case. She knows that's not the case. Customer service problems take a long time to resolve. Absolutely. One of the reasons it takes a long while to resolve is because the frontline employees have very little discretion in what they do. Although you have employees there that have been there for quite a long period of time and know that company inside and out, they're given very little discretion to resolve customer complaints. And one of the problems, and what causes most customers to leave a company, is because their complaint, their problem is taking way too long to be resolved. One of the reasons that is the case is because there's a disconnect between customer loyalty and employee longevity. But we will get into that as we go forward. HR should offer continuous training only if there is time. Now, Janice has heard this from the top executives for a long time. You know, continuous training sounds good, reads good, but she should only do it if there's time. And you know what? There just doesn't seem to always be time. Somebody's always busy. No one makes time to have this happen. When we lose customers, it is all customer service's fault. Finger pointing starts, and they all usually end up being pointed at customer service department and the customer service people. And that is just plain not true. When the company loses a customer, everyone is at fault. Everyone is to blame, and we need to start, and everyone at her company, she realizes, needs to start accepting that accountability. Other departments are just way too busy to worry about customer service. Absolutely not. Every department, every person in every department needs to worry about how their company is being perceived by the external customers and internal customers, and remedies need to start being made. HR should not be too specific when describing the job to applicants. She has been told that point blank. Janice knows that's not right. Janice knows that's just a remedy, that's a prescription for someone leaving early, for not wanting to stay at the job for very long. Janice's belief is, and I think statistics and studies will prove her out, if you're honest and upfront and tell the person exactly what the job entails, they will be prepared, they will know what to expect, and there's a better chance of longevity and employee retention. HR has a directive to keep onboarding brief. We know how often, for a nickel for every time Janice is heard, we don't need a lot of onboarding. Just put them in the job. When I first got hired, I didn't have onboarding, so let's just go ahead and do that. Well, again, times have changed. Business models have changed, HR's functions have changed, and one of the functions is to provide good onboarding. And if we are not spending enough time on that, then I'm afraid that the employee is possibly, and it's being set up to fail. HR has directive to keep salaries low, below industry average. This is, again, another prescription for employees' voluntary terminations, leaving, customer disloyalty, customer going somewhere else. There's a disconnect between the company and the customer. The vision's out of alignment. If you see, go back again and look at the company vision, but we can see everything that's happening in the company and can see that there is a definite disconnect, a definite out of alignment that's occurring here. The frontline people have no discretion. We've talked about that. They need to be able to have the authority to resolve the complaints. There is no reason in the world why a customer calling in should have to be transferred, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and then across the globe. And Janice knows this, and she knows that's something that needs to be addressed and to be fixed. Customer service reps have a directive and incentives to keep the calls short. But yet, we want to provide great customer service, but we're providing the wrong policies, procedures, practices to reinforce the vision. So the vision, the strategies, the policies, procedures, practices, and training all out of alignment. Now this is a great slide, and it shows exactly what happens when a company's vision and its policies, procedures, practices, processes, and training are out of alignment. For example, 80% of companies, if you went and interviewed companies, they would say, 80% of them would say they deliver superior customer service. We do a great job. We are fantastic. And I bet you some of those 80% of those companies are probably in those industries that have that bad reputation. Just guessing on my part. I have nothing to back that up, but I bet you that's the case. But you've got 80% of companies that say they deliver superior customer service. But when you go behind and you talk to their customers, only 8% of the people think these same companies deliver superior customer service. Folks, there's a disconnect somewhere. There's something that's really out of alignment, and someone needs to take off the rose-colored glasses because something isn't right. So this is just an example of how a company can think they're doing well, but in reality they're not. And that's why we have to go and you have to take the time to measure what is happening both internally and externally, and you have to do an audit, a customer service audit, internally and externally, on a systematic, consistent basis. When things are out of alignment between the vision and actually the policies, procedures, practices, and training, when all of that is out of alignment, a lot of things can happen that can cause an organization to be suffering financial problems, organizational problems, staffing problems. And this is just some of them up here. I'm not going to go ahead and read them. You can read them yourself. But suffice it to say, it causes a lot of difficulties for an organization. Janice knows that there are a number of items that need to be fixed. This is number 2. This is probably one of the most important slides. I know I've said that before about the company vision, but this is also a very important slide. And surprisingly, a lot of companies don't know the answer to this. Do you know what your customer values? How do you know that? What have you done to find that out? The organization, your organization, must make consistent efforts to know what the customer values. Too many times I have seen the executive suite, marketing, operations, sales, think they know what the customer values, but when surveys are done and feedback solicited, too often we find that the customer had one idea, had their own values, and the organization had a completely different one. I think the slide, a couple of slides before us, when we looked at the 80% versus 8%, is a perfect example of this. As you can surmise, if we do not know what the customer values, how in the world can we put in place the proper policies, the proper practices, procedures, processes, and training in place? We can't. You just cannot do it. So we really need to make extreme efforts to find the answer out to what the customer values. Once we know for sure what the customer values, then we can translate those customer values into effective practices, procedures, policies, processes, and training. Let's see what else we need to do to work towards keeping our policies, practices, procedures, and training in alignment with the customer values. So we know what the customer values. We translate the customer values into effective practices, procedures, processes, policies, and training. Now we need to link talent to the customer values. For example, if you find that the customer values someone really taking the time to explain a situation to them and not sound frustrated or rushed, then you certainly don't want to hire talent that is very much in a hurry, has very little patience, and at times can be very blunt, abrasive, or rude. So we need to keep that in mind. And on the next slide, we're going to go into what are some of the best practices that we need to look at so that we do hire the proper talent and make sure we are linking the talent to the customer value. So one of the things you want to do is develop best practices. You have to get better recruiting and selection practices that are in alignment with the core company vision and strategy. You have to recruit individuals whose basic values appear in alignment with organization service vision. Your onboarding and continuous training have to be thorough, have to be effective. Your continuous training has to be ongoing, has to be systematic. And also, no surprises when somebody's hired. How often I have seen companies hire someone, tell them one thing, they get in the job, it's something completely different, and 2 weeks down the road they go to lunch and they never come back. We've all had that happen. If you're in HR, for any length of time, you've had that happen. Well, something wasn't done right. You need to monitor the employee's job experiences. Again, we want to initially make sure they have that success, that they feel that feeling of successfulness when something is done well, and a sense of pride in their job. It doesn't take much to put them in those situations initially. And then you really need to pay special attention to the follow-up of new hires and all the employees leaving. Special attention. Remember, there's an adage that you start as you intend to continue. That is why it's very important that we have our new employees start as they intend to continue. On this slide, we see why best practices pays off. A lot of times we hear it. This is a matrix from the Hackett Group. And in this, it talks about what they found out when world-class companies use world-class HR best practices. It saves money. It doesn't cost money. It saves significant amounts of money. So this is something we need to keep in mind as we pursue best practices in our own organization. We've talked about this in some other slides, why it is important to have the rewards support the alignment, linking to the values, the practices, procedures, the talent, and so forth. We need to make sure our performance standards are aligned with the service mission. We have to make sure that the customer service excellence is part of each supervisor or manager annual plan, goals, and objectives. Someone needs to be making sure that's happening. And we need to make sure that management's established standards of service quality for all aspects of the service experience. Let me underline that again. For all aspects of the service experience. That our customers, internal or external, tell us are important to them. So, as we move forward, we need to look at all of the things all the decisions we make when we look at the value, we look at the translating the values into practices, the linking into the talent, making sure the reward system is right. Well, we also need to track how that is doing. Have we made the right decisions? By tracking it and measuring everything, are we doing the right thing? Is there a wrong decision that's created a problem somewhere down the line? So you can't just assume the decisions you're making are right. You also need to track them, and we'll see that in the next couple of slides. Now, on the previous slide, we were looking at how you reward someone and make sure the incentives and rewards are in alignment. This slide talks a little bit about, or shows a little bit about, all of the considerations that go into the reward system. HR policies and procedures, are they consistent with that vision? Are we looking at the base pay? Is it consistent with it? Is it consistent with the customer values? Well, what about recruiting? Are we doing that? Does it make sense? Training, cross-utilization, is that making sense? Do we have that in alignment? What about our measurement practices? Are we really taking the time to do the proper measurement? Are we sort of glossing over that? What about the incentive pay and information sharing? These are all things that as HR professionals we need to take into consideration and make sure that they are in alignment with the vision and the values of our customers. As we talked on an earlier slide, we've done all of these things. We know what the customer values. We've translated the values into the effective practices and processes and procedures and so forth. We've really linked the talent to the customer values. We feel we've done a really good job rewarding and supporting the alignment. But the last thing we need to do is also track the impact, and we need to do it on a consistent, systematic basis, not just on occasion or when we have some extra time. It has to be set down and it has to be done consistently. So we want to track the impact of all these decisions that we've made. Has it been successful? Are we gaining more clients, our customers? Are we keeping more employees? Are we seeing the morale better? Is the communication working between departments? Or do we still see the silo effects? What about the attrition of customers and employees? Is there a good connect? What about the resolution? What about the correspondence complaining about customer service? Is that reduced? A lot of the measurements that need to happen, we need to take very seriously. We need to look at all the various aspects of measurements and make sure we do them in a very consistent basis. So let's explore a little bit on the measurement side of this whole matrix. Look at this. Now, how do you do this? How do you track the measurement? Well, here is one way. This was done an example of 20 top service companies, what they measured, and the quality of measurement, 1 being poor, 5 being outstanding. And as you can see, they took the time to measure the direct recruiting and hiring costs. They had a 4. They took the time to measure the aggregate employee turnover, but they didn't do as good a job on the quality of new employment replacements and the ability to maintain internal wage levels as the turnover, or the impact of turnover on customer retention. So they measure some things really well, some other things they didn't do well. We need to really look at everything when we measure, not just certain items. So be sure when you're trying to measure things or you hear people trying to measure that everything is being considered. Here's another slide on measurements. We meaning not just HR but the company and each of the departments inside the company need to measure the progress on how well we're aligning the customer values and expectations with the vision, with our policies, with how we're performing, how we're talking, how we're thinking, how we're communicating. We need to make sure that that alignment is still very much there. We also need to look at customer feedback, not only the external but internal. And then we need to share the feedback. Sometimes companies are afraid for some reason to share that feedback with the employees. The employees already know the answers. It's certainly the ones on the front line. If it comes back bad and the customers are unhappy, trust me, your employees know that. There's really no secret there. So be sure you share it, but most importantly, discuss it. Find answers to it. Why is it happening? Find solutions. Again, also internally. And then lastly, look at the business results. Now, if you are a public company, you should be able to look at the financials. And then if you don't know how to read a financial, learn how. Because you should be looking at the financials of your company to see, are we doing well? Are we not doing well? What areas aren't we performing as well as we expected? Did we do well the first quarter? Are we meeting our expectations of what was told at the beginning of our fiscal year, which is, or calendar year, whichever. But you need to learn to look at the business results and see if what you're doing is also being effective. If you're losing money, more so than you thought, or your CEO or board thought, something's not right. Go back, step backwards, and let's try again. Let's figure out where we went wrong. If you're making money, then something's going right. Figure out what you did right. So if you don't know about the business results and reading financials, then please learn how to do that. It's extremely important, not only to the organization, but also to your career as you move forward. Some other ways to measure is the win-loss analysis. How many new customers do you have? How many customers have you lost? Why? Why did you win? Why did you lose? The customer satisfaction survey, we've talked about it. It often can be a very structured method and deals a little bit more with quantitative. So sometimes it might be just a good idea if everyone in the organization or you pick up the phone and talk to someone. Again, internally or externally. When an employee leaves, you can look at that as a win-loss analysis. Why? Why did they leave? Why did you lose that employee? Why did you have someone decide to join? You should know all of these answers. Things must change. Here's the third item that we must look at to start the change in our organization. The third item is HR must have a seat at the C-suite table, because you need to become a strategic partner in the high-level decision-making and strategy formation that occurs at that table. You want to become a strategic partner at the C-suite, because you need to help formulate your strategy. You need to become a proactive force, not a reactive force, which we have a tendency, a lot of HR, middle management and executives have this reactive behavior to what happens in the C-suite. You'll find strategies being formulated at the C-suite, and they're then told to the HR department, who then has to fulfill the policies, procedures, practices, processes, and training that fit that strategy. Even though there are things that are not correct, that are out of alignment with that strategy, we as HR people know our business. We know what's your professional. You know talent. You know what expertise, what the compensation is. You know how the communication strategy should be happening. You and marketing should be working constantly together. I've seen so many companies where marketing doesn't talk to HR and HR doesn't talk to marketing. That is craziness. There should be a very big synergy between the two of you, so that you're working on how to communicate these strategies to not only the internal but external people. HR does have a part in that. And if you're going to be viewed as a strategic partner, you're going to need to start playing a bigger and bigger role in that aspect of the organization. So let's look at what is considered reactive and what's considered proactive. Here you see what's involved with a reactive department and executive. You have the strategic, reactive, where you make the strategy happen. You didn't formulate it, you just made it. And on an operational basis, you're just going to implement the very basics that exists. On the other hand, if you're proactive, you're going to create some strategic alternatives. You're going to be involved in, hey, what about this? Shouldn't we be doing this? Or this is the vision, and this would be probably more effective. This is your bailiwick. This is your job. You know what's going to... Your bailiwick is personnel, knowing what makes somebody satisfied, employee satisfaction, and you need to let the bosses in your organization understand that. And then you're going to not only implement the basic, you're going to look to see how you can improve the basics. Again, this is a proactive approach that you as an HR executive, HR department needs to do. So actually, I can hear some of you saying, But my boss, they just don't look at us that way. They just want us to identify talent, just answer some questions they have, look at the executive compensation, how do we staff things, and how you going to just get these basic processes implemented. That's all they're asking us. But you have to understand, we're all victims of our past. Sometimes the senior executives, they don't know any different. They don't know that HR has evolved, that HR and a lot of the best practices in companies that have excellent customer service are taking strategic roles, strategic partnership roles. We have to educate them, and that is part of being a proactive executive and department as well. So to enhance your seat at the table, work at creating your personal relationships, interpersonal relationships throughout the company. Don't just stay in your little HR department and maybe deal with just the few people that you might deal with. Make it your effort once or twice a week to go out and talk to other executives in other departments and just talk to them. Develop your interpersonal relationships. Tell them, see what their challenges are. Tell them what your challenges are. You need to have a solid understanding of how your business works and the issues facing your industry and organization. How can you be a partnership formulating strategy when you have no idea of the nuts and bolts of your organization? If you're new to the organization, make it your mission to find out. If you've been there a while, make it your mission to continue to educate yourself on that. Because things change. Challenges change. What was true a month ago may not be true now. So you have to stay on top of that. And then always, always keep your reputation for meeting commitments. That is extremely important. Fourth thing that must change. One of the things that must change is that we need to pay attention to our internal customers as well as our external customers. In order to have a good customer service as an organization, the value that we place on how we service our internal customers has to be equally as important as we place on our external customers. In fact, internal customers can be defined as individuals of other departments within an organization that an internal supplier serves. In this sense, an organization can be conceptualized as a chain of individual units that are linked together to satisfy our external customers. One of the things to keep in mind, the external customers have a certain level of satisfaction quality dimensions that needs to be addressed in order for them to be satisfied, and they are probably a little bit just a little bit different than what the internal customers value as to be satisfied and to have their customer service needs met. They're very similar, but they are different. I think the external, in fact, at some point we'll go into this just as a separate presentation, but the external customers have, I believe it's been condensed down, it can be condensed down to 5 dimensions, and the internal has 6 dimensions. But one of the most important that the internal customers have that makes them feel good and they have good customer satisfaction is the level of intimacy that they have with their counterparts within the organization. And if you remember, a number of slides ago, I suggested from an HR standpoint, and for you to become a better business partner, to go out and talk to other people within the organization, find out what their challenges are, and share and try to be helpful. I think that would hold true to all members of the department heads, executives, and just other people, to go out and talk to their counterparts and understand what their challenges are and facing. And that goes a long way to the intimacy factor that's important to the internal customers. So, as I mentioned, hopefully down the road we'll do something just specifically on how to work with the internal customers and make sure that they are feeling satisfied. If you want me to talk to you some more about this or come out and talk to you or other members of your organization, feel free to give me a call. Number 5. Now, Janice says, wait, I know there are 3 things that are important to employee satisfaction. One is leadership. The employees need to see a leader that is out of their office, leading by example, keep saying the vision, keep talking about the vision, doing what the vision says, leading by example. The second is work. Again, they need to have some discretion. They need to have a high involvement system where they're involved in their work, and also that they have and they feel that they have the authority to resolve customer issues or issues that they see coming up, and their ability to resolve that. That makes sense. And the third is the policies, procedures, processes, and training that are consistent with the leadership, with the work, with the vision, with the strategy. Now, the cost of employee dissatisfaction can be immense. For example, you have separation costs. Now, the separation costs include processing paperwork, separation or severance pay, or unemployment benefits. Then you have your vacancy costs, which have to cover work shifts and responsibilities while new employees are recruited and trained. And your replacement costs are very costly. You have advertising vacancies, interviewing potential applicants, paying for employee selection tests, medical examinations, moving expenses, and the time and human resources needed to perform these activities. They're really just quite expensive. And then, of course, you have your training costs, which includes direct and indirect costs. So when employees are dissatisfied, it's just not that they're unhappy. There are real costs involved with this, and we need to try to keep that, to turn that around and make sure that they are satisfied. And if we do that, you'll find that we will be saving a significant amount of money in the long run. Okay, so let's look at what the 6th thing is to try to remedy, try to fix in order to improve our organization. I've often been asked, well, should everyone really be involved in customer service? Isn't that just the customer service job? Well, I think if you've been with me through this webinar, you're going to know my answer to that. And hopefully it's going to be your answer too. No, absolutely not. Great customer service should not be the domain of just one department, but it needs to be the mission of the entire company. It has to be. And as an executive in the company, you need to make sure that that happens. And everybody understands external customers and internal internal customers. The biggest threat to customer service is the overuse of technology. Now, many company CEOs, senior management, managers have really put tremendous faith in the ability of technology to solve a wide variety of problems. Now, don't get me wrong, I think technology has its place in a company. But really, when it comes to working with customers that requires a degree of personal contact, that's difficult. You can't do that with technology. It's difficult, if not impossible, to take the place of a human being by using technology. If anyone has tried to reach someone at a company who prays to the technology god, you're going to find it, as I have, almost impossible to speak with an actual human being. You get a lot of voicemail, and you get to personally become familiar with, I think it's Odyx that answers the phone, and I often wonder if there really is a person like that. But one of the biggest and most frequent complaint that we often hear by customers is that automation has really overtaken the ability of a customer to reach a human being. Now, while automation can be expedient and in most cases perhaps initially or at least on the surface appears cost effective, it really isn't. Automation results in really a very impersonal experience. It just leaves you empty. And organizations forget that every actual interaction with the customer is an opportunity to connect with current and prospective customers. Too many times I have seen companies stay ahead of the curve in terms of what's bothering a customer, or what are the more recent trends, or what is a customer heard going on out there in the marketplace that you can really leverage and take advantage of. I've seen that done, and you're only going to see that and hear that and have that happen when a human being is actually having a conversation with another human being. What this ends up doing is saving significant amounts of money. It can save you from a bad policy that's been put in place and people are starting to tell you about it. It can be about a trend that you're missing because you aren't listening to it. We have audits listening to it. So it's important that we keep that technology is important, but it is not, it never was meant to replace a human in the business. In 2011, 86% of customers just absolutely quit doing business with the company because of a bad customer experience. My gosh, let's not add to it by completely ignoring our customers, our human customers. One of the things to keep in mind, and a lot of times it's forgotten, but any business with customers is in the people business. I don't care whether you have a lot to do with external customers or not, or just a little, but if you have customers, believe me, you are in the people business. This is number 7 in the list of items we need to look at in order to make our organization excellent at customer service. This is an excellent slide. I need to thank MIT Sloan for this. When looking at this graph matrix, you see this is a cycle of poor customer service and how it is just perpetuates itself time and time again. There are basically 2 circles. One is an employee circle or cycle, and the other is a customer cycle. The employee cycle is inside, and as you can see, it involves wages, it involves minimization of selecting talent, training. Employee boredom is very strong. You have then employee dissatisfaction and a very poor service attitude. That will permeate and filter into the customer cycle, where you see customer dissatisfaction. You see a tremendous lack of continuity in relationship with the customer, and largely because if you have dissatisfied employees, what happens? They leave. So you have a new employee coming on fairly regularly. And what does that do to the customer relation with the employees? It disrupts it because they're talking to a new employee every time they call. That is extremely frustrating. You have to keep telling the same story, and it never seems to, the resolution never seems to happen with their complaint. You fail to develop customer loyalty. Very big. Customer loyalty is very big in an organization's financial success and differentiation. We are then constantly trying to find new customers, and that's a very costly affair. And this just continues and continues and continues. And one of the things that happens in this cycle, and I've heard this a number of times from executives, is they say, why should I improve on these things? Why should I have higher wages that are either equal or better than industry average? Why should I have better training? Employees just leave. Well, that's an extremely short-sighted way of looking at it. A better way of looking at it is, if you do that, if you improve the wages, if you improve the training, if you improve the discretion that employees have, and you have happier employees, and you have customer continuity, you're going to make more money, you're going to be successful, and you're going to see that bottom line just go crazy. So it's important. If a CEO can just take the time to take off the blinders, look further ahead than just in front of them, they will see that that's the case. In fact, this next matrix that I show you will show exactly how this is broken and what should be done in order to break a cycle of poor customer service. As I mentioned, this slide shows how to break the cycle. Again, MIT Sloan, thank you very much. Same matrix, same chart. You have your employee cycle in the inside. You have your customer cycle in the outside. But as you can see, it's a lot different than what we saw before. You're going to see above average wages. You're going to see intensified selection efforts, extensive training, employee satisfaction seeps into the customer cycle. You have high customer satisfaction. There is a continuity between the relationship and the customer because you have employees that stay. They're happy. Why are they leave? They wouldn't leave. Why? So you have that continuity. You have a customer loyalty that happens. They're going to spend more money. They're going to bring other people in and tell them to come visit and come buy things from you. You're going to have to just not spend so much money on finding new customers. You always need to spend some, but it's not as critical as before. You're going to have better training. Your human resources practices are going to be great. You're going to have an empowerment of frontline personnel, broaden job designs. This is what you do to break the cycle of bad or poor customer service. And hopefully you can take this, or your CEOs or COOs, whoever doesn't quite buy into this, you can see this, and you can start making the appropriate changes to break this cycle. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means we all need to work as a team. There has to be a team effort. Everyone needs to listen to what each other is saying. Hire the right people. Develop the right processes that align with the important aspects of your organization. Continue the education of your employees. Do a great job of onboarding. Keep and develop a strong service culture. Do what you can to reinforce the excellent customer service that you want to achieve. And be proactive participant at the strategic table. Do not be a reactive person. Be a proactive participant. And there are things that, as I mentioned in earlier slides, that you need to do in order to achieve that proactive stance. So let's recap. Did we learn to understand the next step in HR evolution? Yes, you're going to be have a seat at the C-suite. You're going to be a proactive member of the organization, and you're going to help in the strategy formation. We did that. We're going to learn the HR's role as a strategic partner. We know that. We have to understand the vision of an organization and why it's critical. If you get nothing out of this session, let's hope you did that. So I feel we got that covered. Knowing the 4 pillars of a service culture and why HR is the main player, we have that. Taking steps to gaining a seat at the C-suite, we talked about that. Reducing customer and employee attrition, one is tied to the other, and that is done through employee satisfaction. And recognizing your internal and external customers. I want to recap, well, really not recap, because we talked earlier about what it was, the cost for customer service, what the cost is to the U.S. economy. This is a chart that indicates what the cost is to the global economy and to the industries that are part of that global economy. Financial services, $44 billion. Cable, $37 billion. Janice has got to be just very upset about that. Airlines, $31 billion. Hotels, $20. Healthcare, $19, and utilities, $10 billion. Now, look at this. This is a whole lot of money. Can you imagine if each of these industries would take just a portion of this cost and apply it to best practices in their organization to achieve top line best practices, a great service culture, hiring good, knowledgeable people, and if they just took a fraction of that, their fortunes would change, their financial ability probably would get better. They certainly would have a distinct competitive advantage over their competitors, and would have a reputation of great customer service, and that gets rewarded by the customers being loyal, buying more, bottom lines improve. So just taking a fraction of what it's costing them to really have bad customer service would serve them so well. So I just had to show you. This was astounding to me. I don't know if it is to you or not, but it's certainly something that gosh, if we could change this around, just think what we could do with all of that money. Now, we can lend a hand. The Cooper Hamilton, this is a little bit of a self-serving commercial, but the Cooper Hamilton Company can help you. We can assess your customer service health of your organization. We can work on acculturation with your internal customers. We can check and make sure everything's in alignment. We can help improve departments' performance. We can help with individual employee skill sets. We can provide workshops and seminars. If you're interested, if you want to talk to us further, call us at 513-910-3975 or email bcollins@thecooperhamiltoncompany.com. I want to thank you for attending. Remember, superior customer value is the best leading indicator of market share and competitiveness. And again, my email address is bcollins@thecooperhamiltoncompany.com. Again, thank you for attending.